It's no secret that when you buy a premium level yacht, you're paying more for it, more for the quality of craftsmanship, more for the build process. But how do we justify that expense? Well, to answer that question, we've come to the small town of Oundle, England, home to one premium level manufacturer, Fairline Yachts. The factory consists of 3 buildings across a sprawling complex. So let's go in and take a look. So this is the small mold room. This is where hatches, things along those lines are made. And instead of coming in with a chop gun and spraying it all in there and rolling it out, everything is put on by hand. And it's a much more time-consuming process, but the quality can be much better controlled when you do it this way. Here's the first course of gel coat. That's going to dry, and another layer will go on. And then the fiberglass starts getting laid in. But the most important part to remember through all of this is that it's being done by hand, and that's more time consuming, more costly, but the quality is controlled so much better. Here's a mold for a GT50 cockpit seat. So you have to picture it upside down and right side out again. You would lay the resin down, put the fiberglass matting down, roll it out, do another layer, add strength to it, but it all starts with a mold just like this. This is the mold for the GT50 cockpit bar bin. Once it's finished and then taken out, this is what it looks like. This one is for hull number 233. Now you can see the quality of the finish work and how it makes a difference when it's done by hand. Now you have to remember the first coat that goes on is going to be this top finish looking coat, and it's not always white. Not only does this have to be done perfectly the first time, but it's also a time constraint. This is going to kick in about an hour, so he's going to do this component, this one, and this, and then it's hardened. Now the same process that we just saw in the small parts room happens here on a larger scale. This is a 50-foot hull. Same process, they put the gel coat on, then fiberglass, and now they're putting a barrier coat on, and what they're going to do after that is put on this GRP, glass reinforced plastic. This will go on, and then the whole thing will get vacuum bagged and injected with resin. Here's the same process being done with the deck assembly. You can see the white where the gel coat was put on, and then you've got the resin going on top of that. It's being rolled here. There's another section right there where it's being rolled on, and then fiberglass mat will be put on top of that, the GRP actually. Now picture a grid stringer system going into this to add support, and then this deck component going right on top of that, flipped over, and then inserted right into this. Fairline does things a little bit differently, and this is something that adds to the cost of a premium vessel. They go one more step, right over here. A liner is first created and then inserted into the hull, and this is going to add so much more support, strength, and rigidity. When you take a Fairline through heavy seas, there's no twisting of the hull, no warping, none of that. And this is why. Take a closer look with me. This has had the gel coat applied first, then the resin has been put on after that, and now we're putting the GRP mat on top of this. And also, with this liner, notice reinforcing plates going on. This one is made out of wood. There's foam core that's going to get absorbed with the resin when it's vacuum bagged. This little component right here has aluminum underneath it that's going to serve as a backing plate for whatever gets mounted to the other side of this. Remember, it's upside down and inverted. Basically, any place that needs to get reinforced will either be with plywood, the foam core, or aluminum, and then have the mat put on top of it. Now, certainly skipping this entire liner process and not making it all would save a lot of money for Fairline, and that money could be passed on to the consumer, but they won't even consider it. It adds so much strength and integrity to the hull. Now here's where all those larger components start coming together. You've got the deck, the superstructure, and here's the hull, and we can see in the back of this hull, there's the grid stringer system that went in. What he's doing right here is drilling for the engine mounts. And this one is waiting for that liner to be added, which this one has, and now it's getting bulkheads put in. And you can already see with these bulkheads what they're going to become. I mean, this is your forward stateroom. This is the ensuite. Sink will go here, shower. Notice we can see grooves in the deck mold. The grooves accommodate the bulkhead. Now let's be clear, the components just don't come out of the mold and go right into the finished product. They're prepped first. Here he's polishing this, and he's been doing this one piece for over 2 hours since I've been here, and he's got a ways to go. More importantly though, that component right there and in that location that he's polishing, it's gonna get covered with a black decal. You're not even gonna see it, but it's still polished to perfection. So you can much more easily visualize now the process. The boat starts down there, the components come together, finish work gets added, and then even more finish work. They just move the boat right down the line. They're all on rollers, so it's an easy process. And then a new one will start at the beginning. This one I can see the IPS pods are already installed. There's the hydraulics over there. The fuel tanks, you're just looking at the top of them. There's what they look like before they go in. Here's a hull that has had the vacuum bag applied to it. They've put a vacuum on it and sucked all the air out. And now it's almost ready for the next step, which is injecting the resin that will flow through the whole thing, drawn in by a vacuum. Now what's important about this is we're talking about why a Fairline is more expensive. There's a good example of it right there. This is an incredibly labor-intensive component of the build process, and it's got to be done right the first time. If there's any mistakes or any flaws, the entire mold is trashed. Once you start seeing the build process and the intricacies that go into making a premium yacht, things start to come together really nicely, and it answers the question of why it costs more for buying that quality. And I hope we answered that question for you today. And that's my full review of the Fairline factory. For BoatTEST.com, I'm Captain Steve. We'll see you on the water.